Hello, everyone. Hi there, Shane. Good to see you today. And here we are with coffee time with Sales Table. And today's topic is very interesting and biggest challenging topic for a lot of sales leaders that we've been hearing so far. And without further ado, Shane, if you can really talk a little bit about, I think, how you came into the whole of the coaching, training, and why you are passionate about it. I know we've had so many discussions about coaching in general, but I would love to really start off with how you came so far.
Yeah, of course. Well, welcome everyone. I'm Shane Jameson. Over 20-year career in sales, from everything from an ICE individual contributor, an IC, to a VP of sales, to strategic sales. And I've had a chance to work with a lot of different companies and some really cool unicorns and startups in the SaaS world. Over the last year, I've dedicated most of my time to doing sales consulting and helping teams stand up a sales organization. And as I went through that process, it became more and more obvious to me that the biggest gap that most organizations have is not the knowledge. That is out there. It's the fact that they don't reinforce that knowledge with good coaching. And so that's really why most of my efforts is building the playbooks, building the programs so that we can coach to that playbook and maximize that rep's potential, maximize that sales leader's potential within the current playbook that they're running. And so that is where my efforts and focus are right now.
That's amazing. Shane, with that as a context, I think, here is what, especially, I think, what we have seen in the last couple of years, especially. There are two things that are shocking to me personally, by the way. Number one is, on an average, 70 to 80% of the sales teams didn't meet their quota last year, right? That's one part. And the second part is only 20% of the sales people bring in 80% of the revenue for the teams.
Mm-hmm.
And which basically kind of, there is so much of opportunity that is out there to really think about why is the rest of the 80% of the reps or the salespeople not able to bring in more revenue. That's the number one aspect of it. And then why do people constantly keep missing quota aspect? I think, those two are the topics that are top of the mind for all the sales leaders at this point of time, right? And then where it really comes down to is to say sales leaders are frustrated that they are not able to bring in the right results, and the reps are frustrated because, hey, we are doing all the right things and it's not turning out to be the right outcomes. So with that as a context, why do you see coaching to be the paramount of really bringing the sales efficiency to the next level?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's shocking to hear those numbers that only 30% or so of reps actually hit their quota. It's so defeating as a sales rep to know that, oh, there are people doing it, but for some reason you can't. And a lot of those sales reps they're not missing because they don't care or they're not working hard. It's because they've not built up their strengths and applied those in the right way within that current environment. So not only is a playbook very important, I think that's really where it has to start, which is just a collection of best practices and tactics and strategies and information that the rep can use in their day-to-day motions. But understanding that is really clear. For me, I think it goes back to not just the company building a playbook, because you often see that, and then it's built once and it's never talked about again. But it should be that living and breathing document. It's something that we're bringing up each and every week to talk to, teach to, and learn from. And when, we talked about this before, Suresh, but a big part of it is not just the motivation piece, which is giving them that, giving them the opportunity to get better at what they do, but it's also showing them how they can do it, right? And so as sales leaders get into this role, especially new sales leaders, they typically performed well as a sales rep, they move into this role, and now all of a sudden they stop selling. And so you don't have to keep selling the product, but what you are selling is the vision what you're trying to achieve and the how you're trying to achieve that. And when we stop doing that and just start telling them what they need to do, we start managing spreadsheets, it makes it really difficult to get for the rep to understand, what am I doing?
What?
Is it
Yeah.
right? Is it good? I know these things. Like, we look at the top 20% that deliver 80% of the results, and then we go, okay, just copy what they do, right? But that may not be that person's strengths. So it's really about putting people in the right position to achieve the results that they desire. And that's going back to the playbook. It's teaching the skills. It's talking about that, and not just moving on to the next thing. A sales leader will stand up there and say in a deal review, oh, you need to get multi-threaded, or, oh, we need to de-risk that, this or that, and think that that is coaching. When the truth is, it's like, coaching has to be about the rep and understanding what their strengths are. So again, you can help put them in position, because not everyone's the same. Just like not everyone's the same on a basketball team or a football team. You wouldn't have the left tackle that
Yeah.
you're handing the ball off to and expecting him to get 10 yards every carry. No, you got to put the people in the right position to succeed. And, we can use those benchmarks and guide people towards that, but not everyone reaches it the same way. And so coaching is about meeting the rep or the person where they're at, and so that they can maximize that potential.
Thank you. That's a great segue, right? So you really talked about rep. I think the more and more reps that we talk to, one of the frustrating point for them is, hey, you know what? Organization is great, the product is great, and sometimes they are really looking for help from their senior leaders, senior management. And the help, what does it really mean? I think it comes in multiple ways, right? It is very common for sales leaders to say, hey, you know what, there are these quarterly targets. Hey, for you it is $250,000 or $500,000 or whatever that is. And then the reps go off, do their own things, and then after a quarter you come back, and then either you are pleasantly surprised or you are shocked, right? And again, one of the things, as much as the weekly briefs or monthly briefs that sales leaders do, at the end of the day, it is really important to control the inputs, the activity that somebody is doing. And that is not often what is not really talked about, right? Because it is very easy to say, I want the outcomes. Yes, you want the outcomes, but what inputs do you need to really bring in to get to those outcomes is important. And I want to get your perspective on how you see with your customers on really managing those kind of, the activities somebody does, and in addition to just looking at laser focused on these outcomes.
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are, where I see teams struggle is that they don't know what good looks like. So they don't have, and to me, that really is just about setting the standards. So you have to break it down into different components, meaning like our effort, our activity metrics, right? That's one. What does a good discovery look like? What does a good demo look like? What is a good proposal? All those different elements, those need to be defined, documented, and then demonstrated over and over and over again. Because most just think like what good looks like is hitting your number. And if you don't hit that, then you're not good. And they haven't broken it down. And it's shocking in a day where we have so many tools to capture this data, yet it's not done. So they don't know how many touches lead to an intro meeting, and how many intro meetings do we need to get to discovery.
Right.
And we as reps come in and we work with these companies that are often established. They have some maturity. They are selling and things are working, and that information isn't there. And so we not only have to depend on the sales leaders to give us that, but we have to take control as reps to go in there and map that out, be able to define what good looks like, and then work backwards to set those standards for the activity that's needed to reach that. How many calls, how many touch points, how many LinkedIn connects, all those different things. We should have a very clear understanding. Once we have that, now we can understand, like, okay, your pipeline isn't 4x of your quota, and so we're not going to be able to hit our quota unless you close every deal. Well, let's take a look at your activity and what you're doing. And if the activity, the amount is there, the quantity is there, and it's still not working, well, let's look at the quality. Like we know where to dig into. if we're not converting from discovery to demo or demo to close
Right.
one, like each of those components, we should know what good looks like in each of those. And that way we can go back and coach to that. And I've been in, as a rep and as a leader, I've been in so many organizations that didn't have that. And that makes it near impossible. You're just getting lucky. If you hit, you're getting lucky. And we can't control luck.
Uh, that's exactly the point. So the one aspect I think we talked about, I mean, we talked about a lot of reps for sure. And when we really think about what changed and happened between 2022, 2023, and of course, 2024, previously there was a lot of high demand for, let's say, whatever products and services that people are selling, which means there is a good amount of inbound, right?
Mm-hmm.
So by definition, by the time somebody comes to you, they already probably saw your website, they have the problem or the pain point. That's how they discovered your website. And now it is relatively easy to talk to them and talk about the product and the value prop and everything, versus somebody doing the pure cold outreaches and the outbounds. Because at this point of time, you got to be really creative, you got to be really thinking about the motivation of the they may not even have the right intent for that prospect to really buy this software or product, right? So a lot changed in the last 3 years, mainly from the inbounds have reduced and then the outbounds have increased. And that really creates a friction between the sales teams, where previously, hey, I have a particular skill set where I'm very good at nurturing, I'm really good at closing these deals because these are all inbounds. And now all of a sudden, I need to really do this outbound activity, which I have no freaking idea. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, what's your take? What are you seeing in the industry? And I would love your thoughts on that.
I think over the last couple of years, it wasn't just, regardless if you had a lot of inbound leads or you were still doing outbound, many reps, because there was a lot more money to be spent, they were taking an inbound approach to everything, meaning they believed the prospect clearly understood their problem. And on an inbound lead, that's more likely to be true, right? They've got a problem. They've started to articulate that problem. They have some clarity around how that can be done. Well, when you shift to outbound, instead of problem solving, a lot of times people are talking to you not because they have a clear understanding of their problem and they've articulated that, but because they just feel something's not right, that they could do something better. We're not getting the results. We haven't pinpointed the exact problem. I'm hoping to come to you, gain some insights, understand what you're seeing, and understand your approach as XYZ solution. And then once we're there and you've helped them gain that clarity through the questions that you ask and providing those social proof stories and customer stories and insights and trends, now we can start to collaborate together on what that solution looks like. And so it's really important. And that's effective whether you're outbound or inbound, taking that approach. What we have to understand is that in any of your target market, right, there's only 3% of those buyers that are ready to make a decision, right? And when they come to you, they are usually 60% of the way down their buyer journey. Well, that's great. But when you look at the outbound motion, when you look at those people that haven't really clearly articulated the problem, they just feel like something is wrong. That's another 30-40% of the target market out there. And that's where, when you get good at that, that's when you can win big. And you do that through, again, having standards as far as activity is concerned, having a standard as to what a good discovery looks like, how we can position ourselves and prepare ourselves to be in the best position to win this customer's business.
Yeah. Thanks for that. So one of the things that we repeatedly, when we talk to the sales leaders at this point of time, Shane, everybody is like, hey, you know what? I don't have the time to train, coach my people, right? And that seems like at this point of time, so critical of a thing for sales leaders to be doing, but yet they don't really focus on the coaching and training, because they're always thinking about, hey, you know what, if some of these people don't work out, I will let them go, I'll bring in new people, right? And can you kind of really think about the fallacy in that thinking and how expensive that is for an organization?
It is unbelievably expensive, but it's the same in sales, right? We do the hard thing not because um, it's guaranteed to get the results that we want, but that's the only way we can get the results that we want, is to do the things you don't necessarily want to do. No one wants to pick up the phone and make 100 calls and get rejected 97 times, right? But if that's what it takes to get the results that you need, that's the thing that you do. And coaching can be hard. Like working with reps can be hard, but there's a disconnect as to what good coaching is, or what coaching is in general. And that's where 80% of sales leaders say they coach, 40% of reps say they get coaching. That's a pretty
Wow.
big disconnect. But we know that when that time is invested into that rep, they are 40% more likely to achieve their quota.
Wow.
And that's worth the effort, right? So yes, you may invest time and energy and resources and into a person and them not work out. But if you don't do any of that, then again, it's luck and you have no chance of winning. And so when we're on the right side of demand and things are just coming to us, you just need a body in the seat. You can be like that. It's not the best way, but you can be like that because you're going to win no matter what. When the market shifts, as it has the last couple of years, and you are not prepared to do those things and really put in the work, then you're not going to put yourself in position to succeed.
Yeah, that's the biggest challenging part, I think, everybody is going through now, because the invisible cost of just letting go people and then trying to bring in new people and training them all the time is one. There is lost revenue. Let's say even if there is, you let them go, you try to recruit somebody, it takes about 2 months, and then they come in, another 2 months of onboarding, and then by the time they get to 50% of their quota, another quarter, let's say, you are essentially looking at anywhere between 5 to 8 months
Right.
of net new rep productivity, right? And that's something that a lot of sales leaders have to definitely consider, as to say, it's not just about PIP, it's not about letting somebody go and then bringing somebody new, but it has a huge impact on your ability to generate the revenue. And that has to be always thought through. So compared to that, going in front of your board of directors and your leadership team and saying, hey, you know what, we can't really reach the goal, it is much easier, relatively easier for sales leaders to actually coach and train their team and make them the best evangelists of the product and service, whatever they're doing, right?
It's exactly right. It's the old quote: if you give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'm going to spend the first 4 sharpening the axe, and then that's going to make everything else a lot easier. And we're expecting them to come in and just hit the ground running and just pick things up through the ether and through sort of their actions. Well, they do pick things up, and it's bad habits for the most part. And if we focus on identifying what good looks like, creating that playbook, working with them on that, all of a sudden you're building a culture of results. And we're not talking about new and different things in the shiny object syndrome, where, yeah, if someone's not working out, the potential in the next person working out is often a greater pool for that person than putting in the work to make that the person in the seat good. So spending a lot of time and effort on the front end builds that culture of results. And when you do that and they understand what good looks like, all of a sudden you're not having to do intensive coaching sessions, right? They're starting to coach themselves because they understand I hit my standard, I met the standard, I exceeded the standard, or I didn't. And then other people on the team, they can go to them because you built this culture of coaching where it's like, hey, we're here to give feedback and to make each other better. And that's what it's about. It's not about like feeling bad because we didn't do a good job. It's about getting the results. And that's what putting that front end effort, putting your effort into the front end, is what's going to result in things being a lot easier, where you don't have people leaving or you firing people because the team sticks around because they believe they can win. So
Right.
when you have a lot of churn, it's often not because of your team's skill set. It's because they don't believe in you or the company. And that's what you got to avoid if you want to have any real progress. Otherwise, you're just burning money.
Yeah. So to dig that a little deeper, the one of the concern a lot of sales leaders that we talk to have is you have these sales reps coming in, whether they transition from the inside sales or different parts of the organization, whatever, or even new hires. You let them do whatever onboarding that you have, typically
Mhm.
HR onboarding, and unfortunately not a lot of sales teams do the actual sales onboarding for them, and which basically means they are like, oh, you know what, you have this 1 week of HR onboarding or whatever, and now you are on the get go, and they go in front of these prospects, they just wing the pitches, the demos and everything, and it takes almost about a quarter or so to know that you probably messed up a lot of
Right.
initial conversations that you have because you didn't really have the right context, right? And that's one of the things where at Sales Table we strongly believe that role plays are a very important topic, and especially to practice them in a safe environment, which is your internal teams in the company itself, and not expose yourself to prospects, right?
Mhm.
Because that's actually a costly mistake, that you go to a prospect and then don't do a good job, versus you try to learn it internally, get the feedback, and then really go. So I really want to get some thoughts and insights from you on how you think about role plays from within the organizations that you work with typically.
Yeah, I mean, just don't practice on the prospects, right? Like that is key. I mean, you doesn't mean you have to be perfect on every call. You're going to make mistakes and you're going to learn from those calls. Role play is difficult. From a People don't like doing it, especially if it's in front of a group. And why it makes it so difficult is because often when you're role playing, they don't know what the expectation is. They're not sure what the thing is that they should say. And so they have to kind of wander into it and think their way through it in the moment. And no one wants to look foolish. And that's why going back to understanding what good looks like and having that in a playbook and talking about that over and over and over again makes role play a lot easier, because when you put someone on the spot, they know it, they're prepared. And then we can practice it. We can get the you know words out of our mouth more effectively. We don't stumble over our words. We're not wandering into the answer, right? Which is just meandering. People want concise, to the point, and that's what builds your credibility. So practicing it and going through the preparation, so you're imagining you're in that role and you're in that meeting. That's how you improve your chance for having success. And if you're not doing that, that is a killer. I mean, it really is going to kill productivity, and reps are going to show up and not be prepared for those calls the way they need to be. And maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't. Maybe they just have some natural ability and they can do that better than others. But what we want to do is we want to practice that over and over and over again. And then we get through the playbook, we've practiced the different objections or the different pitches or the different product value propositions, whatever it may be. We go through that over a series of time, and then we don't try to find something new. We go back to the beginning and reinforce it. And that's where I think a lot of sales leaders and sales teams fail, is that it's about doing the boring stuff over and over for a long time. And then that leads to the exciting moments.
You are so spot on, Shane, because one of the things that, for example, as a founder, I get into on a continuous basis is, once we get onto a 30-minute call with a prospect, sometimes there is such a rapport that we are talking about the business challenges for, let's say, 20 minutes. And then I don't want to all of a sudden cut that conversation and say, hey, you know what, let me jump into the demo, right? But then there are demos that I would do for 15 minutes, for 5 minutes, for 1 minute,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because at the end of the day, it's really about, I mean, yes, I know how to demo for 30 minutes for
Right.
sure. But if the situation needs, you should be comfortable in doing it in less time. Or when we talk about the pitch, the typical pitch that you would really practice could be a 5-minute pitch. But what if the prospect who came in, unfortunately, for whatever reason, they are in a rush, and then you need to really bring the message out very clearly. So these are the kind of situations where you practice in a safe environment, get the right feedback, be comfortable, and then when you go to the real time scenario with the prospects, now you have the ability to kind of really go through, navigate the waters, and then not really feel pressured. Because if the sales reps on the call feel pressured, then prospects get it like that, and then that really leads into a different conversations in terms of, hey, is this the right company that I'm working with even, right?
Right. And you can go in and have a fantastic discovery call, and then you get on the demo and you just give them the same generic demo you give every other person. And they're like, oh, that rep didn't listen to me at all during the discovery call. And we're not talking about what matters to me. We're talking about every feature under the sun. And so when you really are a master of your skill, your craft, right, you can explain it to someone like they're 5 years old and break it down to very simple terms. And what we want to do is just talk about what they care about, right? But you have to know. And when you're just going through a generic pitch or you're just moving through the motions, it's because you don't know and you're not sure what to do. And you're just hoping that if I talk about everything, they'll think I'm a genius and buy. And no one cares about you, right? They have one or two problems. What feature set, what can your product do? How can you approach it that is going to help them solve those problems? Talking about anything else just serves to confuse. So being a real master of your craft requires understanding what good looks like, requires the practice and the preparation, and that's going to put you in the best position to win.
Completely. So Shane, I think that is one thing that we keep hearing about. Show me that you know me.
Yeah, right.
Right, in the calls, that just don't show up and then say, oh, you know what, I'm going to start the demo, and then people will be like, what the hell are you doing really, or here in the calls, right? And when you are thinking about preparing for the calls, can you share some insights on, of course, I mean, there might be several ways to do it, but then what comes to your mind on what should that pre-call preparation should look like?
What you want to do is you want to come with a perspective. So some really simple preparation and research ahead of that, right? The more complex the sell, the more preparation you need to do, right? But at the very least, you need to understand what's the purpose of this call. What is the who am I talking to? And maybe you don't know, you can't find out much about that specific person, but if the playbook's set up right, we know this buyer persona. We know the trends, the challenges, the initiatives that they care about. And so I can show up with a perspective. For me, I'm always hopping on during the research, understanding, the company, the person that we work for, looking up the buyer persona, but then I'm writing down 5 or more questions that I want to ask this person based on my research, right? And these are questions I know. I don't need to write them down, but doing that and going through that exercise, make sure they're in my back pocket so I'm ready and I can be present. I don't have to look at a checklist of questions to ask. I can simply go in there and let my curiosity lead the way. And when we do that effectively, that's what's effective, because sales, I like to say, is an open book test. All you got to do is ask the questions and they'll tell you what you need to answer with.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if we're not asking the right questions and giving the right answers, then that means, again, you could just sign people up for a webinar and let them sign up if they want. Right. So a salesperson is about finding a way to relate, connect with that buyer and make them feel good about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So that brings to the topic where one of the prospect that I was talking to, Shane, I mean, he came to the call super frustrated, by the way, and then he was like, hey, what are you dealing with, and then how can we help? He's like, the first things first is his reps, when they go onto the calls, they start the demo right away. Right. So for them, he's like, hey, yes, they are trained to go do the demo calls. Yes, that's fine. But they don't ask the right questions. They don't really look into. And then I'm like, okay, no, that's great. So do we have a role play mechanism or a training mechanism to really show them how a call should start, the questions that they are supposed to ask, the qualification questions or the minimum questions that they need to ask, And then the demo, he's like, yeah, I mean, they are salespeople. They are supposed to know.
Right.
I mean, this is actually a pretty big company, by the way, about $10 million in revenue
Mhm.
on their side of it. But then for me, the surprising part is, yes, salespeople are expected to know, but if we don't give them the enough training about how your organization, your culture needs to really take it up, then it doesn't really matter how experienced somebody is. These kind of things keep coming, right?
Mhm.
Because somebody, I mean, to your point, if somebody is really great at their craft, they will do it anyway. That's for sure. But I think what we are really focusing is on the people who can be improved and who can generate more revenue for you. That's really the area that we are focusing on. And unfortunately, I think a lot of sales leaders don't realize that, and they don't focus on that often.
I mean, understanding the product and being able to demo it is key to any rep success. Even if you have resources to do that for you, you still need to be able to know how to do that. And some sales doesn't. You don't have to. Let's not expand the sales cycle and just set these arbitrary meetings. We can have a short discovery and get into the demo. But again, the demo should not be. You're not paid to demo your product. You're paid to help them solve their
Right.
problem, provide a solution. Now, if the rep is jumping right into it, and what I'll say to that is, like, if they are a company that's at 10 million and that's their motion, right, to jump right into it, that means the product is really good. The product is selling itself because
Exactly.
it's almost in
Yeah.
spite of what the rep is doing. And we want to avoid that, right? Why take someone through a 30-minute demo when we need to show them something that could be 5 minutes and that could fulfill their needs? So that is really where we want to focus. And those, you may have those standard, right? We want to qualify. We understand what's their motivation to change. Where are they going to find value and understand success with our product? Who are the people that are involved in this? Meaning, do I have influencers, or do I have people on the line that can write a check, right? So understanding all those elements, but you need to speak to that person, and that person is going to tell you exactly what they need if you ask the right questions and do it in a way that makes them believe you care,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
you understand them, and that you understand their role and you understand their industry.
Completely. So, Shane, I think while we were talking about it, you spoke about culture more than 3 times, right? Uh, so, from the sales organization standpoint of view, how do you build that culture of continuous improvement, continuous upskilling, right? Because most of the times, what we see with organizations that we work with is they do the onboarding, they send them to some sort of sales training initially when they joined, and that's done.
Mhm.
Right. And we are really here as part of the sales table, and our mission is sales training, coaching, and upskilling is not really a one-time task. It has to be a continuous improvement cycle, and especially when we think about the challenging economic times or whatever, the reps have to be completely prepared and confident before they go to their prospect, right? And the pricing is changing, the business models are changing, the playbooks are changing. If that is so, then your reps also should be trained and coached on what is the right thing out there. And that's exactly the aspect where I want to get your thoughts on what does it really mean by building that culture of continuous training.
Right. I always believe results rule. So if you're getting the results that you want, in order to do that, there has to be a framework. And so it goes back to, again, understanding what good looks like, defining that, documenting it, demonstrating it over and over, having a sales methodology or sales method. And it doesn't matter what that is. That just allows you to have the framework to speak the same language. So when we're talking about our opportunities, we know the lens that we're viewing this through, and that creates that continuity. And then as we go through that, we have to find those moments to teach. But I'm a big believer in every meeting. I think three key elements of a good meeting is metrics. Let's understand where we stand, what's going well, what's not. Mastery. So what can we learn today that makes this better? And then motivation, again, connecting them to that bigger purpose and what's driving them as an individual, but also us as a company. So those are your opportunities to teach within those normal interactions that you have on a day-to-day basis. When you do that well and you continue to repeat that process over and over, you're going to get the results that you're looking for. And if you're not, again, it's no matter, even when people succeed, if it is a mediocre organization, they don't enjoy it, right?
Yeah.
Like money is only going to take them so far. And so you have companies that have, maybe they don't have high churn as far as their employees, but they're mediocre. And so everyone's just settling for meh.
Yeah.
I want to be a part of that organization. I think the best organizations, the funnest, are when we go out and do hard things together. We don't have to become best friends, but when we do hard things together, we bond over that. When we achieve a goal that no one thought we could achieve, like you're going to bond over that. And so that's really what a culture is about producing the results, giving people the vision and showing them how to do that. And as a leader, it's just repeating that over and over. And your reps should not be surprised at what you say. I think a good leader is going to their reps know exactly the feedback that they're going to get because you've talked about it so much. And that's fine. We're still going to miss things. That's why Michael Jordan had a coach and LeBron James had a coach and Tom Brady had a coach, right? They know more than we could ever, or they've forgotten more than we can ever know in their perspective craft. But they still have a coach because you need someone to see the forest for the trees. And if you're not doing that as a leader, you're not coaching your team, then you're not going to build that culture of results. They're not going to bond. It's not going to be a fun place to work because people have fun when they win.
Yeah.
So and I promise you, these organizations that are getting 20% hitting their quota, not having fun. People aren't having fun. Even the winners in that situation aren't necessarily having fun.
Yeah. So, Shane, one of the things when we talk about the teachable moments in a way is when the sales leaders are giving the feedback to the sales reps and the vice versa, right? I mean, sales reps also give feedback to the sales leaders as to say what is working for them, what is not working for them, why something is absolutely not working, for example.
Right.
How do we kind of create those coaching moments in a way that doesn't really sound like a criticism or negative feedback to the reps, because that's what everybody is dreaded, right? I mean, you know what, I don't want to go into this kind of negative feedback session and then be talked about, all the things that I'm doing wrong.
Right. That'll
Right?
beat you down.
Yeah. So what would be, some of the framework or thoughts that you would have on how sales leaders should be thinking about it?
If you're talking about it regularly, that's going to be the first step, right? If we're discussing the things that we're supposed to be doing, but we have to move past the theory of these concepts and these tactics and really review what's actually happening in real life. 70% of sellers and sales leaders do not listen to their calls or go back and review their calls. That is a huge, huge miss.
Yeah. Yeah.
I get it. No one likes to sit there and listen to themselves talk, and like you cringe in those moments, but the game film doesn't lie. And that's part of the process. You have to do that. And when we do that, then as a leader, I'm not having to go in there and say, hey, you suck at this. And they're in that seller's thinking, oh no, I did ask that. But as we review the game film, review the recording, we can see you didn't ask that question. You made an assumption here. So at that moment, it's less about telling them what they need to do and just working. So how could we change that to better position that question? Or how could we have changed that so that we ensured we set the next steps at the end of the call? And so if you don't have that playbook, you don't know what good looks like, you don't know that in the beginning of the call, we need to frame it and set a clear path as to where we're going and make sure there's time to talk about next steps and that these are the questions that we're going to ask, then you're going to get a hodgepodge of experiences and success. So I believe, again, talks about talking about it over all the time, tying, in throughout those interactions, reinforcing the theme, whatever it is you're talking about that week, that month, that quarter, that year, and then consistently reviewing the film with them and saying, that way they can see it, you can work with them to collaborate on a solution, and that's how they learn.
Gotcha. So, Shane, I mean, would you be thinking about these coaching sessions to be more of a one-on-one sessions or group sessions? And how often do you encourage leaders to do it?
You should have both, right? One-on-one is highly effective, but that can be time consuming. I think most leaders book an hour and they need 30 minutes. So one, look at how you can reduce that one-on-one time down to less. And that's because, like, let's say we are reviewing a call in that one-on-one session. We don't need to listen to an hour-long call. Let's just take the first 5, middle 5 minutes, and the last 5 minutes and go through that. Now we're at 15 minutes, as opposed to, that could be 2 hours if you're reviewing an hour-long call, stopping and giving suggestions. And then nothing is remembered. But when you keep it simple, you give 1 or 2 points of feedback that and 2 points of feedback that they can go and apply immediately. That's where you get growth. And then just as important as those one-on-ones are the group sessions. And again, that needs to be where not only are we doing, like, talking about trainings and tactics, but also reviewing the calls with the group. People learn from each other. It's great to be able to hear and have what you did well highlighted to the rest of the group. And when you're struggling with something, it's great to often hear that someone else has struggled with the same thing, and this is how they overcame it. So facilitating that is just as important. As far as the cadence, I think it needs to be a lot of effort needs to be put in on the front end. But when you're in a good rhythm and you're getting the results that you need, you can do that less and less, right? You can do one-on-one coaching sessions instead of every week, every other week. You can do group sessions once a month. But in the beginning, you got to go through a bit of an intensive, kind of a boot camp, and say, this is going to be hard. It's not going to be fun, but it's going to be fun when we get the results that we're striving for.
Gotcha. I think this actually comes to a good part of our discussion today, Shane. There are, I think, 2 specific questions that audience have, and I think I'll go with that first one, which is, with a lot of these tools like Gong and others, there are these volumes of data that is getting generated, right? And if I have 10 sales reps or so, then think about the volume that it gets generated on a weekly basis, monthly basis. And as a sales leader, how do you keep tab of all these transcripts that just get generated? And then how should we be really thinking about incorporating them into the coaching aspect?
Yeah, great question. I think from a time perspective, right, you have your kind of top 20%, they're probably going to need less coaching than your middle of the road to bottom, percentage. So, what I love about those tools is that makes it really easy to filter down, and you have leading indicators that then give you an idea of what you need to focus on, right? This person's not converting these discovery calls into next steps. Well, let's go back and see how they're starting these calls. And now we know where to focus our time. When you get down to the sort of the analytics of the call, understanding what I love, the data I love on calls is patient score. How long does it take for them to respond after the prospect or the person on the other end has stopped talking? And that allows the prospect to feel heard if you give them the space. And when you're talking over them or jumping in as soon as they're done talking, then it creates a tension. So I love that one. I love seeing, like words per minute. I'm someone that can talk pretty fast. Doesn't mean that we all need to slow down. What we need is to have that variety in how fast we talk and what we do. Change our tone, change our inflection. Those are things that interrupt the pattern that the buyer is expecting to show up and get pitched. How do we avoid that? How do we get them to let their guard down? And again, so that's what the call reviews and the data from those calls can enable. And when you're doing it at scale, I think it's you coach the person, not we meet them where they're at. Right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to have the same coaching session with an underperformer as I am with a top performer. It's just the way it is. So you need to utilize that, understand what good looks like and where we can focus our time to move the needle. And if you understand that person's strengths, then you're going to be able to target and use the data and analytics that will be most effective to get to the point.
Gotcha. Thank you. And the last question over there is to do really with what's the role of, for example, soft skills in the sales performance management, and how do you really teach somebody soft skills?
So I believe how you teach someone soft skills is make sure that they are prepared. And the reason being is we talk about, listening skills and empathy and things like that. And if you're not prepared, you're not going to be able to focus on those soft skills. So if you have to think about what to say, you're not going to be able to take the time to listen because you're thinking, you're in your head. And that's where I believe everyone's got a script, whether they've written it down or not, running through their head. Right. And so let's be intentional about that and let's prepare. Let's, as if you are an actor and you get up on stage and you don't know your lines, and you're like, well, I'll just wing it, I'll just improv it. That's not going to be a great, consistent performance over and over. But those actors learn those lines to the point where it's not something that they have to think about. It is internalized and it just comes out of them in the right moment. That's the level we want to get our team to. So they know exactly what to do in the right moment. Then they can focus on those soft skills. And we can highlight those during those coaching sessions and say what's going well and what's not going well. But that's key. It's like those aren't going to matter until you can get the hard skills down, until we've met the standards that we expect to achieve the results that we want.
Absolutely. It's one of those things where, Shane, at Sales Table, the one thing that we strive for is every sales rep, with the amount of right preparation, they have to feel confident when they go in front of the customer or a prospect. And without that, and lack of preparation actually shows up in these calls. And that's not, unfortunately, fun for anybody, not for the rep, not for the prospect. And then ultimately the company is not going to get the revenue because of these missed opportunities. And that's something that a lot of sales leaders are paying attention, which we are really super happy about. Because again, it's one thing where, to your earlier point, when there is a very high demand and then your product or service sells on its own, then of course, I mean, whatever you do feels like that is a great strategy that is working. But in fact, it's not because you are doing the right things. It's because there is a abundant demand for what you are doing, right? So from that angle, to really go to a place where you are doing the right things from the preparation point of view, understanding the value prop of your product that you are doing, and especially understanding the pain points of the prospect that you are going to meet, right? The first call is really about understanding the pain points, why they even took the call, for example, right? A lot of people just assume that, oh, the person came into this call because they are interested. You can't assume that, right?
Right.
There are a lot of prospects that, for example, I went into where they are like, hey, you know what, it seems to be a cool tool. I just want to hear from you.
Yeah.
Right. Again, there are multiple categories like that. And that's really where we want to make sure, especially I think from the coaching and role plays point of view, people are much prepared early on in a safe environment. And thanks for providing so many great insights, Shane.
Yeah, of course. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I couldn't agree more with the approach and the way you're going about helping sales teams through Sales Table.
Absolutely. Shane, thank you so much. Until next time.
Yes, sir. It was great. Take care, Suresh.
Thank you.